So I am here today with the author of The Profit Culture Formula and the Catfish interview, Jon Corteen. So Jon, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So Jon, you are a super crazy, busy business owner. And one of the biggest objections that I hear from people who are business owners like you, who are contemplating writing a book, is I have no idea how I'm going to get that accomplished because I'm crazy busy. So there comes a point where somebody crazy busy decides that it is, in fact, time to write a book, even though they're crazy busy. What was that point for you when we worked together on the Profit Culture Formula? Why was that the time that you wanted to write a book?
Yep. So up until that point in time, as we were growing our organization, a big piece of it, at least in my mind, my part in it was to how can I differentiate? How can I differentiate and become more attractive to the right people? And how can I differentiate from the way it's always been done? And so as I started to dig more and deeper into that concept or that way of thinking, it became clear I needed to become a category authority in what I was already good at, which was building, creating cultures that attracted people, but also stayed attractive to those people so nobody wanted to leave. So we had that recruiting and retention all wrapped in one, and I was able to do it successfully to a point where it was driven by myself and my business partner. But as we began to scale, I understood two things. Number one, if I wanted to continue this, I wanted to go deeper with it. But two, I needed to scale it internally and be able to teach what I do to people inside of the organization as we continue to get bigger and bigger and replicate those experiences inside of the culture. So the main reason was I needed to get to a point to differentiate and scale. And this category authority kind of goal became very, it got pushed up front. And a big part of that was, okay, I need to get a book and use that book to kind of position myself initially as that category authority and then expand from there.
So I'm going to stay on the first book that we worked on together. So the biggest question people have is, not the biggest question, but one of the questions that people have is, maybe what I should do is I should have a course first instead of a book, because you're going to sell courses make more money, and maybe I'll focus my attention there first. Why would writing a book first, as opposed to putting together a course, make more sense from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's way easier, and I think it's the natural progression. From the book perspective, I think the course, you're kind of running into the dark trying to figure this thing out, and it gets out of order. The book is going to have this natural progression of a story, taking somebody through that experience and getting to the end of the book. It was very easy to look back and see your course or multiple courses that could come out of that. I think on sides too. There's no brainer, the right choice looking back. I think at the time I was like, I don't know, it makes more sense, so let's try it. But looking back, I think if I would have done it reverse, who knows? It would have taken, maybe I would have got burnt out along the way before I even got to the book. But the second thing too is that when we have the book finished first, and then we run out there and start to develop this program, the marketing's already done. Like we already have the marketing tool to go out there with to then position this program as a solution. And so I 100% believe it's the right order.
So I love that first of all, you're one of the most strategic dudes I know. I like, just working on this project, I learned so much from you on strategy and how you make things work. So one of the things I always tell writers is you are probably not going to make money on book sales. There are those people who really, blow it out of the park, but their focus is on book sales. And that's a whole different ball game. How do you use your first book how is it an entryway into your products, or how is that book making you money?
Yep. Probably in three spaces, maybe more. But first off, it's a huge recruiting tool for my main business because it does separate. I can hand somebody the book and it puts them right into my brain. And as far as an interview, we can only go so deep and only go so far based on how much time we have. But I will send them the book after and tell them, look, if you want to go deep, if this is interesting, you want to go deep into my brain, here you go. And so they'll get a deep dive in terms of how we do things, which is going to give them what? Well, a better idea of what the experience is going to be like and how they can count on it being delivered by us, because when they read the book, it's all there. And second piece, so that's a huge one. I mean, that is a huge differentiator just from the attraction power of that organization, and me as a leader. Second thing is the book has brought me into places for public speaking, which also does all the other. So all these things are intertwined and they're constantly feeding each other, but it's got me into there. The book now also sells programs and courses from there. The book has gotten me into situations where I might speak, and before I know it, I'm interviewing an entire team to bring into my organization. So every piece is feeding now back to itself, but the book was definitely the entryway into kind of kicking the door open and allowing all these things to pad. I mean, I looked at it like, if I don't sell a course because of the book, I'll still hire a ton of people. And if I don't hire a ton of people because of the book, I'll sell some courses. And at the end of the day, and with the public speaking on top of it, at the end of the day, it's all working and it's all feeding each other in its own way as the, next after effect side of it. So.
Yeah, you're super strategic, which leads us to the difference in your motivation for writing the second book. So the second book is the Catfish interview. How is the readership, the audience for that book, different than the audience for your first book?
Yeah. So the audience for the first book, it's the solution to this culture thing that a lot of people have no idea about. We talk about it all the time, but have no idea how to systematize it, how to become intentional with it. And so it's the solution. It's the how-to guide to build this into your organization, bring this into your organization, or build an organization with this from scratch. Second book is now the other audience. So we've got the leadership and the organizations working on one side. Now it's all the people out there in the world that are interviewing and looking for their next gig, looking for their last gig out there in the world. And normally if they're looking, unless it's their first job, something didn't go right where they were at. And a lot of times what I'm finding out there is what didn't go right. Well, it was this experience that they thought was going to be there when they got there, and then over time it's proven not to be there. So in the business world, we call it the bait and switch. I've been through it. I don't think I've hired somebody into our organization that has not been through it themselves. So the goal of this book is now to take this whole entire universe of people looking for their next job, hopefully their last job, and teach them how to interview for that culture, for that experience, so they don't get catfished or have another bait and switch in their life. Because I've found just being in this world, talking to people, interviewing people out there, most, if not 99% of the people have no idea how to ask questions that go deep. It becomes very superficial. It becomes a lot of buzzwords, and then it becomes a gut check or a gamble. But at the end of the day, what are we gambling with? Well, our time, our energy, our mental health, money, all these things that, if we have to restart our career again, it's a pressure on us. And so the goal is this, to be a nice, short and sweet read, the 5 questions they need to ask to be able to understand a few pieces of this culture thing. Like, are they serious about it? Have they put time, money, energy, and resources into it? Are they going to be able to deliver on it consistently? Have they thought about the people and what the characteristics are that will thrive inside of their culture? What happens if there's another pandemic? What happens to how do they respond to things like that in a crisis? And so with these questions, it's giving people now an opportunity to control that portion of the revenue and not leave it up to a gut check and a hope and this sounds good. Because the problem is sometimes you're only getting the perception of the one person you're talking to. Sometimes you're getting a buzzword and you're hoping it's going to pull through, but this will at least let people walk away understanding if it's right for them, if they can count on it being there, and if they're serious about what they're doing with it and focused on it. So.
Yeah, one of the things that I liked about this book in particular is when we began work on this book, you were very clear. I mean, you were really clear on the title. You wanted something about the Catfish interview, and I went out and started looking at Catfish, and it was definitely a trending topic. It's something that the demographic, the readership would immediately understand, the code language. But you also understood that this needed to be a short read because the purpose was somebody who's interviewing, who's probably fairly quick moving. They're not going to read the profit culture formula because, number one, it's too long, it's too involved, and it's written for the leaders of these companies as opposed to the people who are evaluating whether or not they want to work for this company.
Yep.
So you understood the person that you were writing to, you understood the big result that you were after, meaning that these people who were coming to interview at your company would recognize the qualities that you guys had, the culture that you had, and to be able to teach them what to look for when they go out invariably to talk to other people in the competitive market. One of the surprises that we had was the assumption that these people would be evaluating culture. But we both recognized fairly early on in the game that they don't evaluate culture, they evaluate something else. So I'm wondering if you could just speak to what they evaluate versus what somebody who's running a company evaluates.
Yeah, I think from the perspective of the reader for the Catfish interview, the expectation that they could, like a scorecard they could walk away with from this, is not so much, okay, what's this culture thing? What's it going to be like? That's a small piece of it, but more importantly, to bring it into the same realm of how do we quantifiably measure income? Well, it's T-chart, one's more than the other. Okay, so we can look at that and understand it. We can now go and look at benefits, or we can understand, okay, well, there's this 401k with a match or not, and how's the health insurance offset work? So we can get pretty good and T-chart those things and come out of it with the one's better than you're the other. But then we get into the experience of the mystery box of this entire thing is, well, what's it going to be like when I'm there? And it's not so much understanding that fully, but understanding what the target is of the organization. What are they trying to do and become? And are they serious about it? Or is this just a buzzword? So that's kind of that first part of this quantifiable scorecard of the experience of the culture of the organization. And then understanding, okay, what have they done systematically? Now they've got this target, but what have they done systematically, and get some idea and some proof behind that to be able to deliver on that target every single day. So they've got something. There's companies out there, they don't even have anything. They don't even have a target. They use a buzzword. We're a big happy family. We're work hard, play hard, whatever you want to call it, but none of that means anything. It's very superficial. So how deep have they gone down that path in detail? And then what have they done to make sure they can deliver on that every single day, so you can count on it? So there's not this honeymoon period, and then it's like, oh, here's the catfish, the bait and switch is here again. And then to look at, okay, how do they now, from that, how do they look into motivation, and how, are they casting a wide net, or is motivation just now trickling down from the leader, so it becomes very narrow? And then we can now look at, okay, and ask the questions of the company, what are the inherent values that an individual needs to have, so that when they get into that situation and they're delivering on it, they're going to thrive. Because I'm a big believer, like when we build something, we're building it for somebody. We're building this experience for a particular person. Have they gone through that? And then what happens if the whole thing gets scrambled in a crisis? How do they make sure? And so when somebody who's interviewing gets to the end of that conversation, They're going to know what the target is. They're going to know how, if they can count on it being there. They're going to know in terms of what types of motivating factors they take care of there, and they're going to know what types of inherent values need to be there to thrive. They're going to know how they handle things in a crisis. Then they get to look at that and say, is that me? Do I fit in that? So no different than looking at, the benefits. Are these benefits strong enough for me to be comfortable? Is this environment now strong enough in all those different facets for me to be comfortable inside of it? And so I think people could get to the end of that, have a great dialogue and say, no, not for me, but awesome interview because they answered all those things, and be confident.
So I want to point out the difference in ROI, because I'm a huge proponent of having the book yield an ROI. If you're going to invest time and energy and money into creating a book, I personally am the kind of person that wants to know that I'm going to be able to monetize this book in some way. So we knew from the profit culture formula how you were going to use that book and how you were going to use it to sell courses and get speaking gigs and even use it for bringing people into your culture, people working for you. How will you know what success looks like for the Catfish interview? Because you're strategic, you already know to some degree that this book has been a success for you and it's been worth the investment. If what?
Yeah. Well, I think there's two sides. First is that it has become, it's a tool for me in an interview. So as I get to the end, I have two goals in my interview process, different than many other people. My two goals are, goal number one is I want to create an ambassador through this experience, because I'll hire a lot of people that are referrals from somebody that I chose not to move forward with. Second thing, which is where this book comes in, is that I want to hijack every other interview that's out there. So I teach them, and the book becomes an easy tool for me to hand to them or send to them. Say, look, I want to educate you as you go out there in the world to really understand this culture thing, because it's important to you, because we talked about it, and let me give you something that's going to help you understand these 5 questions to go out there, which links back to what they just heard through me. So it does create this comparison that puts us in a spot by ourselves. So yes, we do we create a lot of attraction to the organization from this book. Second thing, it is, you look at the original program profit culture formula, which was, hey, leaders, okay, if you're not doing this, all right, here's the path to be able to do it if it's important to you. But we can always fall back to just, okay, it's the way it's always been. We're fine. Everything's good. It's okay. What's going to change now that the cat's out of the bag is that as more and more people have this education on how to interview for the aggregate experience and the culture that they're looking for, or that they're going to join or not, as leaders start to get asked these questions out there, they are going to need to seek the solution for it, which was the predecessor book to this one. So it's kind of poking the bear now for the original solution that was put out there, which was kind of my intention.
Super, super strategic. The other thing that I think you're very good at, you have a lot of opportunities, or you spot a lot of opportunities, and you've certainly created with both of your books the opportunity to be speaking to larger markets, not just your own market.
Yep.
And you recognize that any sort of business that wants to keep their people who can change somewhat easily from, that they tend to be jumpers. They go, it's an industry with faster turnover than a lot of industries where people are being hired and salaried and whatnot. Tell me how you evaluate the universal nature of your book, and what you will do with that and what you won't do with that.
Oh, honestly, as much as I'm in an industry, people going to work and wanting a specific experience, I think not only is it trending, it's always been there, but it's trending again. It's becoming popular again. But I think what we're seeing now is not just because of things like the Great Resignation and people are talking about that, but just from a generational side of this, that people are becoming more demanding. You grind it out for 5 days, be happy 2 days. And that's how I was brought up. That's how my father taught me to work. You just grind it out. And then and to me, the math it seemed like bad math, like 5 to 2 every single week for how long? Like for most of my life. And then I started thinking, well, if just for myself, I want to be happy all 7 days. I mean, if that shouldn't be a selfish thing out there. So as you look at where these things are trending and what people are looking for and the questions that they want to ask and what's important to them, I mean, I'm seeing culture and whatever you want to chalk it up to, culture or the aggregate experiences at work is now happening to not just always in the top three of what people are looking for, but it's taking first place in a lot of instances right now with consistency. And so as you look at, all right, my industry being one, that is about, I mean, that's a blanket that you can lay over everything. Anybody that's going to be looking to bring people into their organization should be addressing this if they want to keep them, if they want to differentiate, they want to get ahead of their competitors. I mean, First In's going to win on this thing. And, we are in my industry and it's taken us to all new heights. We always did it, but now we can like communicate it to the entire world. And so I think that piece of this, as I was writing the book and thinking about it, I'm like, I struggled a little bit about even staying in my lane on the book. Like, okay, I don't want it to just be a bunch of financial professionals reading this thing, because what you learn from it and what you can implement has nothing to do with financial services. It has to do with relationships. It has to do with attraction power. It has to do with connectivity and engagement and all these things, all these words that get thrown around. But most people look at it like, I don't know where to start. And so I think it's got a much broader stroke in terms of where, well, I know it's already happening, where it's going to have some impact, just even in HR as a whole, right? How many companies, what industries have HR departments? All of them.
Yeah,
So
I'm interested in seeing what comes your way organically.
Yeah,
that you didn't expect.
I'm sure it'll, yes.
I'm sure it will too. So let me talk about the writing process for a couple of minutes. Number one, what were the benefits of working with a writing partner?
I had a bunch of ideas. I actually went far enough to try to write my ideas down and get them in an order. And then did not know what to do. Had no idea where to start, had no idea how to start. I think what I thought the process would be like wasn't, which was a good thing, which was stopping me. I mean, I didn't wake up, have this idea and then do it the next day. I tangled with it probably for way too long. So the advantage there, just to be able to, I think it was our first meeting and you explained, okay, here's how we're going to do things. You're just going to like vomit all this stuff out and just get it out of your head, and no order. Let's get all those ideas and you'll help organize. And there was a lot of that back and forth, but each time everything got in a better spot and more narrowed. So that was a big piece, just getting off the starting blocks. Second big thing I think was having some accountability to be able to, because I do like 1,000 things a day. So when there's 1,001, I don't know where to fit that one, but if it has a deadline, it will get done. And if I commit to it, it's going to get done. So just being able to keep the process moving, and as much as it's fluid, but keeping it moving towards a goal, and that's a huge piece too. And then I think there was a lot of times, maybe the third advantage, there's probably many more, but there was a lot of times that I just couldn't get out what I wanted to say in what I would position myself as a reader want to hear. So there was like this translation of my thoughts to the page that would make sense for a reader versus what's going on in my crazy head. So
a lot of people who have never worked with an editor like me, or a content developer, or a partner. They don't know what to expect. And if somebody could have told you something that would have made it easier for you, or know what to expect to make the path smoother, what would you tell somebody? What's the one thing that would be good to know? before you get yourself a partner and are involved with a partner of some sort?
Yeah, I think for me, if somebody would have told me, look, whatever you think it is, you're way overcomplicating it, way overcomplicating it. Just start it. Don't worry about the end of the book. Don't worry about the next chapter. There will be an order to this thing. It's going to be a brain dump, and then things will come, and you'll start chipping away at this thing. Before you know it, you're going to have this finished product. And I know I was, before getting into this relationship, I was way overcomplicating how and why and where these things are going to go, and even the order of things. And I think it starts out as a bunch of, it's a bunch of stuff that's just put down, but very quickly you can start to see now where this thing's headed and just chip away at it. No different than anything else, right? A little bit all the time rather than a lot some of the time. And that's really how this got handled, right? We're just working on a little piece, little piece, little piece. It's like, what is it? Eat the elephant one bite at a time before you know it.
Good,
Got it.
good,
So,
good reference. I like that. Anyway, I so appreciate you taking the time, because I know you are super busy. And here's to massive success with these two books.